Welcome to Motherhood and ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sun. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, successful mama. It is your friend, Patricia Sun. Well, we are jumping back to school for just a moment because here we are in October and a lot of us have parent-teacher conferences coming up. My son's is this week, and so I thought I would share as a teacher, what do I wish parents asked me? Because a lot of people come in the door and they're like, what's my kid's grade? Okay. And that was it. They didn't have any questions for me. No knock on them. I think it's easy for me to look back now and be like, I don't think they knew what to ask. They just knew like the grade is the obvious barometer of how we're doing. And so I know that and I'm good to go. But there's so much more that we can learn about our children from their teachers. And so let's jump into what I wish parents would ask in their conferences and some rationale behind that and the mindset that you can go into the meeting with to get the most out of that time with your son or daughter's teacher. Because there is so much more that goes into our child's development than just grades. Now, usually you only have about 15 minutes with the teacher, but you can get so much great information from your teacher in that 15 minutes. So what kind of mindset do we need to go in with? 1, we want to talk about both strengths and improvement. So not just focusing on either one, but a balance of the two. Next, stay open-minded. Don't freak out if you get some kind of news that you weren't super excited about. Absorb it in. Focus on the solution that you and the teacher can talk about while you're there together, while you have that FaceTime. But just try to keep your emotions calm while you deal with the solution because you do only have a limited amount of time with the teacher face to face. I'm also going to let you in on a little secret. Teachers spend all day talking to large groups of children, but most of them are actually quite scared of parents and public speaking in general. I was often shocked by the number of teachers who could stand in front of an entire auditorium of children, and yet you put them with one grown-up and they're shaking in their boots. So have that sense of grace and, hey, we're all people. The teacher's probably just as nervous to talk with you as you are with them. And then keep in mind that how your child acts in school is different than how they act at home. Now, for most of us, this is a good thing because when our kids are with us, they can let go of the filter they've had on all day and they let loose, and sometimes it's a little draining as a mom. But so that flip side is when they're at school, they're worried about what their friends are thinking about them, keeping up with social norms. They're going to have different relationships with different teachers, so they may act differently in one class to the next, depending on the respect they have or their interaction, that relationship they have with the teacher. Just know that that is normal. It is not weird if your kid acts very different in first period versus fourth period, or with the art teacher versus, the teacher they're with all day, depending on grade level. That is normal. So don't discount what the teacher's telling you if that seems out of line. Those red flags of like, hey, this is weird. Why is he acting differently in science versus math? Those are all clues that your kid is giving to you so that you can figure out how they work. So just be aware it is very common for them to act differently in different classes with different adults, different school years, different times of the day, all totally normal. And then being honest with the teacher. Some parents would come in and like try to paint their kid in a better light. And it would always make me laugh because I'm like, I know your kid's a chatty Cathy. I'm not mad at them. Like, this is par for the course. There's always a chatty Cathy around. But it would always make me question, like, are you trying to influence the way that I see them? The problem with that is that if we're trying to pretend that this kid is not a chatty Cathy and yet the chattiness is affecting their work, we aren't going to come up with the best solution for them if we try to solve a different problem than what we actually have. So if we have a talking issue, we need to address it directly, not pretend like they aren't that chatty. Just let all that pretense go. Your teacher spends a lot of time with your kid, so let's all just be open and honest with each other and figure it out. Now, the other thing I've heard a lot of as I've been, trolling through Facebook groups and stuff is that there's always people worried about having a new teacher. Here's the thing. Everybody has a first year at their job. You had one the first year you were being a mom or whatever job you've had in the past. Everyone's had a first year of a job. Pluses and minuses. Obviously, they don't have as much experience, but I found that first year teachers have so much enthusiasm. They're not jaded by the system yet. You get the pluses along with the minuses of not having as much experience, but most teachers will have a mentor teacher that they can go to for questions and advice. And so if your teacher isn't sure what to do about a solution, I always recommend to say, hey, could you ask one of your mentor teachers or something if they have any ideas? But that way you can still get the benefits of teachers who've been around the block a few times in the solution that you're looking for your child. Okay, now as I jump into these questions, keep in mind, I'm going to try to cover all ages. So bear with me. Some of these questions you're going to think, yeah, that makes sense for a preschooler, but my kid's in high school and vice versa. I'll try to give enough information that you can piece out what you need for your child. But all of these questions are going to be tailored for your child, how old they are, what kind of situation they're in. Do they have any learning struggles? Are they in a new school? There's so many things that come into play. So take these ideas and then tailor them into the questions that work best for your kid that are going to get you the information that you want about your child. So that's my first tip, is to go through a few minutes, take 10 minutes a couple days before the conference and write down all the questions that you want to ask. Because a lot of times we get into the meeting and all of a sudden everything has flown out of our head. You'll have that list there. And then also take notes while you're there so that you can refer back to them later and jog your memory of what you all talked about. And just as a blanket statement, if you think back to the other back to school episodes we did, I think they were 24, 25, and 26 were the episode numbers where we talked about back to school prep and, building a good relationship with your teacher, having an introductory meeting with your teacher. The three main points to work with your teacher is that we need to be respectful, supportive, and communicate together. And I think with those three pillars, you can build a great relationship even if you have, I call them like that teacher. Everybody ends up with that teacher at some point. So, you just got to do your best to work through that when you have a teacher that you're not a super fan of. But overall, teachers go into teaching because they love kids. They want the best for their kids. You don't spend all day with a bunch of 8-year-olds because you don't like kids. I'm sorry. Those people don't last that long because teaching is a really hard job. And to do it when you don't enjoy it, they don't make it that long. Anyways, so types of questions to ask. I mentioned earlier, a lot of times people ask, what's their grade? And then that's it. So let's talk about schoolwork first. The kind of questions you can ask are not only just about the grades that they have overall, but look at the individual grades. Are they consistent? Are they all over the place? Are they turning their assignments in on time? Are they complete? Your child might have a B on most assignments and you wouldn't know unless you ask that they would have had an A, but they turned everything in late. So now they have a B. So it's those little things, those little nuances you want to ask about. How are they showing that they know the material? Are they participating in class? How do they participate in class? Do they ask questions? What does their attention span look like? Are they listening when the teacher is speaking or giving instructions? Do they follow the instructions the first time? Do they need more reminders? All of those things are elements in their learning process, and you can gain a lot of information by asking questions tailored around how they're showing their knowledge. It's not, I know people are like, what? Surprise, surprise. It's not just about the grades, especially if your child has any learning struggles. It's not just about the grades. There's so many ways that they can show that they know the knowledge, even though they didn't get the best numerical score. Next is asking about their social skills. How are they working in groups? Do they work well with others? If you have preschooler, like how do they interact during their center time? If you have a high schooler, how are they doing on group projects? Are they contributing their portion correctly and on time? When they interact with their classmates, are they kind, helpful? Do they look out for others? Are they respectful? Do they use their manners? All of those things are wonderful character traits that need to be developed as well. And maybe your kid's not an A student, but you know what? They're the person who's going to help another kid who's struggling, or they're the one who always checks to make sure that everybody has their lunch. Those little things are so valuable and they get overlooked a lot of the time. So sometimes your child's strengths may not be in the score, it may be in how they interact with other people. You can also see their social skills during their non-work times. So who do they sit with at lunch? Who are they playing with at recess or during free time? When are they leading? When are they following? Who are their friends? Those are all important things that we as moms care about, but we sometimes don't think about putting a name to it or the specific questions from the teacher. But I don't know about you, but as a mom, I care a whole lot more about my kid being a kind friend than whether they got a 97 or a 98 or a 52 or a 57. Like, there are some things in life that you need to know in the work setting that you have to be developing the whole way through your childhood, like being able to work well with others. That's a key point. The first time I got asked that question by a parent, it was like, how does he interact on group projects? How does he work with others? And I was just like, wow, no one has ever asked me that before. And that is so relevant. Now, let me sidebar for just a moment. I am not saying that every kid needs to be the extrovert social butterfly. For example, your child only needs one good friend. They don't need 53 best friends. They just need one. What I'm saying is that even introverts need to be able to get along well with others. And so understanding how your child interacts with others will help you direct those skills so that they can still be successful in a social setting. If you know that your child does better working on their own, that's great. You can help them find the activities that are right for them. Like maybe they need to be in a sport like fencing and not soccer. But that doesn't exclude them from needing the skills to be able to work well when required, because there are very few things on the earth that involve zero interaction from other people. And so those basics still need to be there, even if that's not your child's strong point. This is one of those things where I am going to say that weakness does need to be developed. I'm going to go on a whole rant about strengths and weaknesses later this month for ADHD Awareness Month, but that is one of those things where you need a basic level of interacting with others, and that's something as moms that we're responsible for instilling in them in the way that makes sense for your child. Some other insights you can gain from your teacher is asking, what are your child's favorite activities? You can figure out by asking that what kind of ways that they learn better. So do they tend to pick visual learning versus kinesthetic learning? So moving around learning versus audio learning. So like being able to like listen and comprehend. That will really help you like at homework time if they're struggling to know, okay, I know my kid does better with hearing things, so let's take turns reading it aloud. Or I know my kid learns spelling words better if they're moving, so we're going to make up a dance to go with practicing the words. So ask the teacher for those kind of insights. What do you think would help my kid learn? What are some tricks that you've noticed really make things click for them? Those are the kind of little gems you can get from that quick meeting with the teacher. And then think about, you have all these questions that I've listed out that you can ask the teacher, but also think about them from your perspective. Are any of those things concerning to you? And then take that information plus what the teacher told you. And if anything's an obvious red flag, then you can sort out a solution with them during that time together, addressing the areas of concern and creating the best plan for your child to succeed that year. And just ask how you can help. A lot of times teachers are afraid to give the parents homework, so ask what you can do. Another thing I caught from one of my parents that I loved, and so I'm going to pass this along too, is that before the conferences, she would ask her kids if there's anything that they wanted for her to talk about with their teacher. So getting their input, is there anything that they're worried about or concerned about or have questions about or want their teacher to know, but they're too scared to tell them or afraid to ask, or, whatever reasons keeping them from talking to their teacher about it. And then when you're finished with all the meetings, circling back with your child and talking to them about what did you learn, keeping that growth mindset. I hate saying keep a positive attitude, because then people think about you, you just shouldn't talk about the negative stuff. You should just make it all positive. Well, that's not true. You need to be honest with your child on where they stand, but yet focusing on how they're going to improve, not just beating them down about what they're terrible at. And without getting on my soapbox, because it's a big soapbox for me, I think just as a whole, society has lost the importance of teaching our kids how to recover from struggle and failure. I think that's a huge disservice that we're doing to our kids, because we always hear the saying you got to get back on the horse. Well, you can't get back on the horse if you never were on the horse in the first place, or if you never fell off the horse in order to have to get back on. You have to be able to struggle and fail in life. And it's a whole lot better to let them struggle and fail when they were young, when they are with you and you can provide that soft landing place for them to recover from. It's so much better than having them fall for the first time when they are a young adult on their own. So if you think about how, when we learn to walk, toddlers are so close to the ground, y'all. Their legs are only a foot tall. So when they fall, it's not very far. And they've got this big fluffy diaper on to help pad the landing. So they can just pick themselves back up, dust themselves off, and they keep going. Well, you want them to be able to deal with their failures and struggles in first grade rather than in fifth grade, or in third grade rather than in sixth grade, or in sixth grade rather than ninth grade, or in 11th grade rather than when they're in college. Anytime that you can help them develop those skills, you're doing them a service down the road. I know we hate to see our kids struggle, but we're responsible for teaching them that skill. We're the ones who are responsible for showing them how to adapt, identify what went wrong, see what the other options are around us. How can we implement something different? How do we pivot? Those are all things that we have to teach our kids. So when I say keep a growth mindset, it's not just about you're terrible, all the things that you can't do, rah, rah, rah. It's about, okay, these are not going well. How do we fix them? How do we make changes? What are the systems we need to put in place to not have this problem continue onward? And your teacher is a great resource, because if they've been helping hundreds of kids, chances are they have seen whatever it is your kid is dealing with. And if they haven't, they probably have a teacher on their team who has dealt with that, and they can ask around. So use those resources. It is free with your education, or if you're in a private school, it is part of the charge. Ask for that help. If you're not sure how to get your kid motivated to get homework done, ask the teacher if they have any ideas. Use that resource. Anyway, summation of that point was, the more mistakes you pack into your youth, the better you are equipped to do them later. So use your teacher as a resource, help your kid deal with those struggles now rather than 4 years from now. If you have a child with learning differences, it is so valuable to emphasize with your child's teacher and the school as a whole that your child's well-being is what matters most. I love reading posts by Sandra. She's at the ADHD Good Life on Instagram, because she's an educational specialist, and she's talking about how when she met with her son's teacher, this is probably closer to the beginning of the school year, the teacher had mentioned that her son had some perfectionistic tendencies and he wasn't getting his work done on time. And her response was, children who have ADHD or some kind of learning difference can receive 21,000 more negative comments before the age of 12 than a neurotypical kid. And here's the quote from her post. She said, "Environmental influences matter, and making a conscious effort in how we respond and feedback to our kids can make a difference in how strongly their ADHD presents, but more importantly, how they feel about themselves. I made sure his school understands that too, because his mental and emotional well-being are more important to me than any tasks he doesn't finish on time." Beautiful words from another mama. So emphasizing that with our school, that how our child thinks about school and how they feel about their education as a whole matters so much, and valuing that grace and that growth will just serve our kids so well. So mamas, good luck at your parent-teacher conferences coming up this next month or so. May this time be so fruitful for you and your child that you can really gain some new insights into who your baby is and learning even more about them than you even thought possible, and finding ways that you can help them as a mom do so well this year in school. I know that this time spent with your child's teacher will make a great impact on both you and your baby. Have an amazing week, Successful Mama.
Thank you for listening to Motherhood and ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodandadhd.com.